Who dat Nation? Welcome into the Who Dat Confessional podcast, where we are entering into the bye week at 5-5 in the most dramatic way possible. When I say that, I mean that. Jason Pierre-Paul is your big free agent addition. Wow. Then you've got a legitimate debate discussion. Jameis Winston versus Derek Carr, who should start. Now, to be very clear, as I said on Bleacher Report, Dennis Allen already said no change. But just because coach says no change doesn't mean a discussion doesn't need to be had. Here's why I say that. Fan-wise, there's absolutely a quarterback controversy. How do I know? Well, because I happen to be on the app formerly known as Twitter, and since for some reason y'all have given me a little bit of Saints pull, I started a poll about 4 hours ago. 2,000 of you have responded, with about 52% of you saying the New Orleans Saints should start Jameis Winston over Derek Carr. We're going to talk about that and more in today's episode. Who dat to those who are here already? Lester, Dr. Billy Oshie Troy, Jefferson the Creole King, Giovanni Martinez. Giovanni, please, I know you're a made man, but no body bags today, no cement shoes. Keep it chill. TJ, Raheem Chemo, Slice, Mr. Barnes, the Antonio, Steve B, Brian W. the second, TD504, Mr. Jerry, Mr. Wright, Black Mamba, Dr. Billy Oshie, who ain't even a doctor, Vlad, Crash the fourth, Rainy, who dat? Welcome in. Hope everybody's having an amazing Tuesday. As amazing as the Tuesdays you can actually have with Saints news being so bleak, dreary. I mean, right now is not a fun time. If you're the New Orleans Saints, you lead the division, and yet I, honest to God, cannot think, and I'm not trying to be dramatic. I really am not trying to say this dramatically. I cannot think of a time in my life where the Saints were leading the division, yet this team was so disliked in terms of not believed in by the franchise. Not a single time. I truly can't think of this. I don't think it's ever happened. I mean, maybe it has. You older Saints fans might know about this. I don't. I have never, in my entire experience as a Saints fan, seen the fan base see them at number one in the division and go, can't stand this team, they need to tank. Now, I know some of that's drama, and I know some of that's legitimate frustration. I always like to say that if you're frustrated with how the team is playing, I think that's completely fair. I got no problems with somebody being legitimately frustrated with things that are going on with the team. I'm definitely not confident in them. Hell, that's been a big talking point for me the entire year. I'm not even going to pretend like my viewpoint on the quarterback situation has changed, though I did have to post receipts for everybody who tried to come at me and say that I'm a Winston hater. I've got receipts going all the way back to 2021 about me wanting Winston to be the starting quarterback. The point is, I just don't trust the coaching staff, and I don't really think it matters who is there. Now, Brian says the Jim Haslett days were comparable. My only thing was, when the Saints were actually winning the division under Jim Haslett, I don't remember. Now, I was much younger then. I was much, much younger, so maybe my memory is skewed. But I don't remember them having that same level of issues, but maybe that's just my poor memory. I mean, and honestly, I feel like Haslett gets way worse a rap than he deserves, because if anybody deserves, like, flack for what happened to the 2000s Saints before Katrina, it's the front office, because that locker room was lost. Y'all want to talk about DA losing the locker room? Holy crap. That locker room was lost. But anyway, that's kind of where we're at right now. And now we have injuries to two key New Orleans Saints players, Michael Thomas, Marshawn Lattimore. I would say the Marshawn Lattimore matters a lot more than the Michael Thomas. Well, no offense, Michael Thomas. I do think Michael Thomas is playing better than I expected, but still, I think it really comes down to Marshawn Lattimore being the biggest one. The good news, if there is good news to be had there, is you've actually had a certain DB who was spending time as a starter who could come back in if Marshawn Lattimore is missed time. If there was a time to get injured, it's right before the bye week. So you got 2 weeks to see if Lattimore can come back and be healthy. But if not, Isaac Yiadom He's going to have another opportunity. And just a reminder, he's posting a 73 quarterback rating when targeted, as well as having picked off an interception, and only 50% of the passes his way are completed. So the good news is that's at least a position of depth, yet he is arguably one of the best players on the team. So there's that. And then you've got the what can the New Orleans Saints actually do? Because, again, this is a preface, warning. The New Orleans Saints, I disagree with it in a lot of things, but I don't expect anything to get better, because one thing I can't stand about Dennis Allen is the accountability. If it is happening, it isn't being told to us. And I do believe that fans, analysts, deserve to know what's going on in the facility to an extent. Now, for example, there are good things that DA's done that we just happen to find out. For example, he changed the way that the New Orleans Saints did meetings in an effort for more communication and better accountability in the team. Cool. No problem with that. But he'll come in, like, he'll get asked a direct question in a press conference following this loss, which, by the way, NFL Analytics Twitter, which y'all can judge analytics for what it's worth. Take everything with a grain of salt. It is a subjective discussion. NFL Analytics Twitter this past week says after week 10, Pete Carmichael is the worst play caller in the entire league right now. That is how they rank him. And when I say they, I'm talking about people like Patton Analytics and Ben Baldwin, etc. The people who do they go to GitHub and they create these code machines that do all the Moneyball stuff, all that stuff that's way over our head. Yeah. NFL Analytics Twitter is just over there just taking massive bombs on Pete Carmichael about how terrible he is. And that's even compared to people like Matt Canada out there. So I brought all that up to say Dennis Allen's already, before the bye weeks even started, kind of said, yeah, we have no real plans for coaching changes. And it frustrates me because I think fans deserve more. Like, fans deserve more accountability from this franchise. They deserve more transparency from what's going on. When things are as bad as they are, I need more than DA basically running it with Pete Carmichael and just yelling Kobe like he's taking a 3 shot, except instead of taking a 3 from like the corner, he's taking a 3 from the 600 section in the Superdome, trying to make it in the Smoothie King Center. Some of y'all will get that reference. Others of y'all need to go to New Orleans more. And I'm not trying to be a Pete Carmichael hater, and I'm definitely not, before anybody gets in this chat and tries to say it, I'm not trying to act like the Saints don't have problems at quarterback. I'm not trying to act like they're having offensive line problems. I'm not. In fact, I put out a video today about my thoughts on this, which basically was me blaming Dennis Allen. I also put out a video yesterday about the good and the chaos of Jameis Winston. And I've said very clearly, that was the most fun I've had doing a quarterback film study this year. Was it bad? Yeah, parts of it were incredibly bad, but parts of it were also just like, holy crap, that's what a good play looks like. And it was nice. Like, it was good to see that. But then I had the same time, like, it was also equally frustrating because I tend to spread out when I put out a lot of this information. I want as many Saints fans to consume it as possible. And I put out on Twitter, like, there was identical Tampa 2 coverage reads for both Derek Carr and Jameis Winston, and they both missed identical reads twice, right? So, like, there's definitely problems in other areas. I don't want to make it pretend like everything's on coaching, but I do think that at the end of the day, it's not the rolling downhill. It actually is uphill. Like, that's where we need to focus on it. And instead of DA trying to, Kobe from the freaking Superdome about how Pete Carmichael's the coach, maybe, just maybe, when you're 5-5, but more importantly, you are 1-11 against teams that are 500 and better, maybe you need to make a change. Maybe it's not all Derek Carr. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not all the offensive line. Maybe it is. But I can tell you one thing with a level of certainty. I can definitely say a big portion of it is the coaching because it's been a consistent thing, right? When they play a bad team, they're good. When they play a good team, they're bad. That's coaching. How do I know that's coaching? Because bad teams that have bad players, they'll just lose, period. They do not just go out and beat good teams or beat bad teams and they just lose. That's what they do because they're a bad team. When you have a team that's talented enough to just whoop up on the Chicago Bears, whoop up. Should have won the Packers game. You didn't, but whatever. Beat the Panthers. When you can beat lesser teams and win soundly because of your talent, but then you go against a good team with a good coaching staff, like Minnesota, who, by the way, has Flores as a defensive coordinator, who I think is a good defensive mind guy. Obviously, he was a head coach for Miami. And then you got O'Connell, a young, up-and-coming offensive mind, which is the trend in the NFL if you want to be a good competitive team right now. I think coaching is still got to be the topic for me. And that's why I preface, I guess I could have gone clickbaity, right? I could have made a video that said, hey, who dat Confessional 717, Carr versus Winston. And you know what? Legitimately, I ran the poll for a reason. I think the conversation can be had. 1,919 people have voted so far on this poll, with 52% of them think that Winston should be the starter. Obviously, that's convo, but I'll say this, and I've said it before this year. Doesn't matter. Why do I think it doesn't matter? Because I think whether it's Derek Carr, who is a more efficient but play it safe style quarterback, or if it's Jameis Winston, who is the risk it no biscuit quarterback, I don't think it matters because I think the coaching, and it's not, I'll be very clear. I've complained about play calling, but everybody who's played a professional sport, a minor league sport, a high school sport, everybody out there knows that coaching is more than just play calling, right? We can all agree to that, right? Pete Carmichael's job is more than just play calling. It's coaching, as in why we do the things we do on the field. Do we have unity as a team? Are we actually operating as a unit? Do we have a central belief that we, as a group, are good enough? Coaching is more than just the play calling. And I still have issues with Pete Carmichael's play calling. But is the offense a unit? Name me a single time, even against bad teams, this offense has looked like a complete unit. Now, I can say the defense has, but I would challenge anybody who's watching us live, or even after the fact, or even on Discord, or even on Twitter, or even on Facebook, when has the offense ever looked like a unit 10 games into this season? I don't think it's happened a single time. That is coaching. And it's coaching on a level that goes deeper than just being a subpar play caller. That is now coaching at a game planning level. That is coaching at a design level. That is coaching at a positional meeting room level. That is now coaching at a literally, do y'all even have, keyword, identity? Because even against the Indianapolis Colts, I don't think the Saints offense clicked all the way. I don't. And that's probably the best example of the Colts game. I'm really just trying to think because I am trying to always try to do this and try to be fair with it. The Colts game is probably the only game I can look at and say maybe, but even then I would still say no. Now there's a reason I would still say no. I don't know if we really want to go down the rabbit hole, but I honestly, even with the Colts game, I still would probably say no, this team didn't play as an entire unit. And I'm trying to, again, be as objective as possible because I know that recency bias is a real thing. You just lost a game that was just ugly. It was. It was ugly to lose that game against the Vikings. I don't like losing to the Vikings. One, because every time we lose to the Vikings, that stupid, gosh dang miracle gets brought up all the damn time. But here's why I don't give the Colts game that type of unity. You came out, you punted, then you scored, Then you had the fumble, which was a 3-possession drive that didn't get any yards anyway. So you went punt, score, no identity. Then you scored before the half. You came out of the half and punted twice. Then you scored twice. Then you punted again. And none of it really had an identity. Now, I will give credit for the offense playing better. You know why I think they play better? Because Taysom Hill had like 11 touches. I think that was a pretty key reason why the team played better. But do I think that the offense was a complete, well-rounded unit? Like, it was all there. Did it all click? I think it was a step in the right direction, and that's the closest you can say. And it's going to get, I think, worse before it gets better. I'm not trying to be a doomsdayer here. But if DA is really going to sit here and say, leading into the bye, no, we're not looking at coaching changes. No, we're not looking at player changes. My question simply comes down to why. Because if you aren't willing to make any change, like, do you look at this team and say, this team is we're there? Because the defense is getting worse week by week, mostly because the pass rush is getting weaker. And I do hope that changes, right? I do. I really do. You know, Cameron Jordan has literally had a habit the past few years where he'll go on a hot streak in the middle end part of the year and he'll get like 6 sacks in a 4-game period. This is something he's done for the past couple of years. He stays an elite run defender, and then out of nowhere, he becomes a great pass guy again. And I'm not judging him for that. I'm just acknowledging that it happens, right? I'm not judging him. I'm saying the pass rush is a big issue right now because you're 10 games in and you're averaging less than 2 sacks a game. Secondary is good, but your defense, which started off the league ranking top 5, is now between 9 and 14 in most categories. You've started to fall off there. And then offensively, you've never found unity. So I, from the outside looking in, would go, well, that means that we need to have some type of change, right? Now, are things better than last year? I guess would be the lead question up to that. Maybe. And honestly, that's wrong to say. Yes, it is. At 5-5 through 10 games, you're doing better than last year. But there's some huge differences. You're an older team. You're the second oldest team in the league right now. Second oldest. You are not trending in the right direction with an offense that has young playmakers. You are tied for a minimum of 2 years to a quarterback who is not playing to the level you paid him for, even though you didn't really pay him at a high level. He still isn't playing as the 13th best quarterback in the NFL. Let me just go ahead and add that. In fact, I'll tell you what stats he is in terms of across the league. So in terms of yardage, Derek Carr is 12th. So I guess technically he's got us on that one. He's making his contract when it comes to yards. But how about touchdowns? He's 19th. Okay? Touchdowns, he's 19th. About first downs through the air. First downs through the air is pretty important. That's 14th. So he's close, but not where you kind of want him to be. All right, how about yards per attempt? As in, like, how is he attacking the field? 22nd. All right, now, okay, that's not really worth. All right, how about quarterback rating? Now, rating going to be a little bit tricky, but that's going to go up and down. His rating is going to have 2 problems. One, touchdowns elevate your rating, but interceptions also lower it. And he has no interceptions. So he's 17th. Basically, you can make the argument that you're overpaying him by about 5-ish spots. But if you go by other analytics, maybe you find him lower, maybe a little bit higher. But the one that gets me, and like it's crazy, and again, we talked about, I briefly mentioned this earlier. Analytics Twitter for the NFL is hilarious. Pete Carmichael has been bad. Now, Steve Patton is one of the analytics guys who does a lot of this work every single week. And for about a 3-week span, they had jumped Pete Carmichael up on the charts. But consistently, he's been at the very bottom. Coming out of this week, he is ranked last, 32nd in the NFL as a play caller. So this goes back to what I'm saying about offensive unity. And now what I want to do is, because I've kind of given my spill, I want to turn it over to the chat. What do y'all think when y'all see this? What can the team really do over the next 2 weeks to legitimately find a way to get better? I don't care if your answer is Jameis Winston's the starter. I don't care if your answer is Taysom Hill is at quarterback, though that is the one that I would argue that's not going to fix anything. If anything, that would hurt to put him as a full-time quarterback. But that's my opinion, and I'm okay to disagree. What would chat say can New Orleans realistically do? Because you're 5-5. If you're following Tankathon, which if you're not sure what that is, it is a website where you can track draft picks by, technically you can do it on other sites, but Tankathon I think is the one that I use the most. Yeah, Tankathon is the one I use the most. The New Orleans Saints are not going to be in a position to probably go after most of the top quarterbacks, depending on what they want fit-wise. If the season were to end today, they have the 19th pick in the first round, and then they have Denver's pick in the second round, which is the 44th pick. And then they don't have a pick until the fourth round. And then they have what is expected to be 3 fifth-round picks because they expect to get some compensatory picks. So at 19, top quarterbacks in the NFL going by then, you've got Caleb Williams. Obviously, the Saints aren't going to get Caleb Williams. You got Drake May out of North Carolina. Who else that you got? I know the name y'all want me to say, but I'm going to hold off on saying it for just a second, just to hold on. But you got J.J. McCarthy, in Michigan? Who else is there? I'm trying to think of all the names. You got Bo Nix, Shadur Sanders, if he comes out for the draft. Oh, you also got the guy in LSU. So, could you maybe? But realistically, you probably don't make that move because DA is tied his wagon. So, that's my question to y'all. What's a realistic option? B. Hyde says, simplest solution is anybody else calls the plays. P can still plan, but literally anybody else calls the plays. So, you're basically in the get Ronald Curry as the play caller, can't be any worse. That's your faction. That's where you're sitting in saying that's probably our best chance to have some level of, change that maybe results. Okay, cool. I'm here for it. Let's keep going. Nola says Carmichael can't even present the most basic logical plays when we're at 3-2. When we're at 3-6, it's mind-boggling. So Nola Novo seems to also be of the mind to just dump Pete Carmichael. All right. Wendell says, sit Carr, start Winston. Now, my only thing with that is I have no issue with the logic. I just think you have a better chance of Ronald Curry calling plays than Dennis Allen benching Derek Carr for multiple reasons. Reason number one, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with this term. I'm very familiar with it in the industry that I work in, the sunk cost fallacy. Now, the sunk cost fallacy is a phenomenon whereby a person is reluctant to abandon a strategy or course of action because they have invested heavily in it, even when it is clear that abandonment would be more beneficial. Usually the sunk cost fallacy is in regards to financial decisions, but I don't honestly think the sunk cost fallacy is even about the financials of Derek Carr. I think it is that DA wanted his guy. And DA went and got his guy. Sunk cost fallacy. That's why I don't think Jameis Winston would ever get started, because Jameis Winston played through a broken back, which he never should have been told to do. Jameis Winston himself came out and said that shouldn't have happened. Now, he still did it, so he, I guess, deserves a little bit of blame. But sunk cost fallacy means you're probably never going to see that option. But I do think that, Winston, and I've said this very much, Winston never's got a fair shake. There are things that Derek Carr is better than Jameis Winston at, but also the vice versa is true. And if you had a damn decent play caller, you might be able to make something happen. Which brings up, by the way, NTR's comments, says change the OC, revamp nearly all the offense on the staff. And I think that's I really do. I think that's a fine option, but you can't do that until the offseason. So, for example, Ken Dorsey was recently let go by the Buffalo Bills, which kind of blows my mind, to be honest. It's a little bit shocking. I think, I'm not saying that he was amazing Ken Dorsey was in his, fourth year as an offensive coordinator, but I think it was only his second year by himself. I had to go back and double check those numbers. So, yeah, I mean, he wasn't perfect. He was growing. He was certainly better than some of the other guys around the league. Now, for Saints fans, real quick, he can't come to New Orleans this year. Reason number one, he doesn't even run the same type of system New Orleans runs. New Orleans obviously running a West Coast system. To give you familiar names, Bobby Slowick, Kyle Shanahan, Sean Payton. Whereas Dorsey, if I remember correctly, Ken Dorsey runs the Earnhardt Perkins systems, which is actually what Bill Belichick does and a couple other people do. So, like, he couldn't even come in, and the terminology is not even the same. So, he's not an option to come in this year. But if you wanted to redo the entire offense, you could bring him in an off season, which you could do next year. But I do specifically want to kind of make sure I keep y'all directed to what could the New Orleans Saints do over the next 2 weeks to focus on to get better. Because that's the goal, right? Like, you still want to win the division. I know some Saints fans want to go ahead and tank it all out, but you still want to win the division. Now, Cran says, Deuce, am I wrong for being annoyed at Carr's lack of accountability in post games when he doesn't play well? All he says is we all have to do better. He never puts it on himself. Well, I'll tell you this. I don't think that I can tell you how you should be annoyed or feel, and however you choose to feel is fine. Introspection and self-accountability is a difficult task for anybody, and how you portray that can vary. I mean, he could simply be trying to push a unified front, and maybe he doesn't want to throw anybody under the bus, and that includes himself. Is that good or bad? Look, man, my background is in player evaluation. My background is not in, player psychology. So it doesn't bother me, but I can understand why it would bother you. I really do. And I think that the most frustrating thing about Derek Carr is, and we ran into this issue last year with Andy Dalton, is statistically, he's not doing that bad. But if you bust out the film like we'd love to do on this channel, you can see that he's not doing good. And what the Saints need is somebody doing well enough to overcome the fact that the coaching system is bad. And Derek Carr's clearly not that guy, right? Like, we rattled off the numbers. At worst, you call Derek Carr top 20, not top 13, right? That was the numbers of where Derek Carr is. I always consider Derek Carr what Madden would call a bridge or mentor quarterback. He's there 2 or 3 years. You hope to find a guy. If he somehow turns into something amazing, great. But that doesn't seem to be what's going to happen. So beyond all that, I look at it and go, I don't really have an issue with how he comes out of the post games. I do feel like there are times that he's, kind of put the blame on. Now, here's where I will say I really, really dislike something Derek Carr's done. When he yelled and went ham on Chris Olave being absolutely just stupid on the field. Now that I do not like. That I called out, and I will continue to call out. That was a big, no. Now, I appreciate that he, 1, apologized for it, 2, actually went to the players to be accountable for it, and 3, actually adjusted how he approaches the team. I respect him for that. So that's fine. But if you want to talk about any type of body language, player psychology that I get mad about Derek Carr, when he throws a ball that Chris Olave was never going to ever be in contention for catching anyway, and then yelling at him for it. That's stupid. That was one of those where I'll support a guy like Derek Carr who's middling as long as the team is winning. I will, because I don't think that he's great. So my expectations are a little bit lower than what other Saints fans might have been. But as soon as he does stuff like that, you completely lose me, right? That's the type of mentality that as a quarterback will lose you the locker room. Now, I am not saying that he has lost the locker room, because contrary to what's going around for a lot of people, I watched the tape yesterday. Did the New Orleans Saints receivers play differently for Jameis Winston than they did Derek Carr? No, they did not. They absolutely did not. Now, and I'm not trying to push an agenda here. I really don't care if you put Winston as your starter. If you like Winston, fine. Guess what? Go back to 2021. You're going to find me saying the same thing. But nobody played any different. Chris Olave wasn't different. A.T. Perry wasn't different. Lynn Bowden wasn't different. Nobody was different. Everybody was exactly the same. The only real difference is you started running more of a quarters and cover two shell with Minnesota, so more things became open. And I'm not using that as an excuse on like Jameis and saying that we shouldn't give him credit for some of the big plays that he did. But like when I watched the game, I didn't see any change of effort, body language, nothing that made me go, players want Jameis Winston. But if you want Jameis Winston because you think he's better, I'm here for it. TD504. Again, I want to read all y'all's chats. If you want to make sure your chat gets said, you can either donate to the channel or super chat. It's all appreciated. TD says Jameis is never the answer unless we're wanting to know the best spot for crab legs. See, the crab legs jokes are cute, I guess, but Jameis Winston can do some things that Derek Carr won't do. And I said that specifically how I did because Jameis Winston's arm strength versus Derek Carr's arm strength really isn't that much different. Like Derek Carr has thrown 55-yard passes to Rashid Shaheed in space and in speed and gotten TDs, right? But Jameis Winston will be more aggressive with the football, and that comes with pros and cons. The first interception Jameis Winston threw, he bird dogged the whole time, should have seen it, had no shot of happening, and still threw the ball. Derek Carr would have never done that. Derek Carr might have taken a sack, though. Derek Carr might have not just thrown the ball at all. That's not an excuse on Derek Carr of being better. That's simply an acknowledgement of how these two style quarterbacks play. One is going to get the damn ball out. Like Jameis Winston is going to get the football out. There was one play, against Minnesota where he holds the ball and just doesn't get it out when he should have. That's the only, I can think of one play he does it and he takes a sack. And I go, why did you do that? It was there. Throw the football. Derek Carr will do that multiple times. So I do think that it's fair for fans to bring up the conversation. I don't realistically think Dennis Allen's willing to have it, but I think it's fair to bring up. Giovanni says, Deuce, if the Broncos at the end of the season have a better record than the Saints, we need to clean house. What's wild is I stated this on Twitter. Good teams find a way to win games, even if they're a bad team. And I think that is the epitome of the Denver Broncos, who are 4-5. They have one less game won. And I want to play because you brought this up. This is your fault. Congratulations. You're a jerk. We're about to do this. We're going roster v. roster. Who's better? You tell me who should have a better record. All right, we're doing this. This is your fault. You wanted this, you masochist. All right, wide receivers. Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims Jr., Jerry Jeudy, and then little Jordan Humphrey, former Saint, Michael Thomas, A.T. Perry, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. I'm taking the New Orleans Saints. All right, let's talk about offensive line. Garrett Bowles, Ben Powers, Lloyd Cushenberry III, Quinn Meiners, and Mike McGlinchey versus Ryan Ramczyk, Cesar Ruiz, Eric McCoy, James Hurst, Andres Pete. Honestly, I'd put that one kind of as a push. All right, Russell Wilson versus Derek Carr / Jameis Winston. Push. Like, at best. Push. Tight end is Adam Trautman, Chris Manhertz, Nate Atkins. Yeah, the Saints are better at tight end. Running back. Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, Samaje Perine, Dwayne Washington, former New Orleans Saint, versus Kendre Miller, Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams. Saints win. And then defense, there is literally like 2 players, period, on that entire defense that are better or could be better than their Saints counterpart. Patrick Surtain being one of those, and that's about it. The entire Saints defense could probably start over in Denver. Maybe I'm biased. And chat, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. And then special teams, they've got Will Lutz, former Saints kicker. He missed one, then managed to make it. But hey, that's what winning teams do. And then, of course, we've got Blake Grupe. We got Lou Hedley, and they have Riley Dixon. Roster to roster, Saints are a better roster, in my opinion. Saints are a better roster. Coaching, though. I think that coaching is better in Denver. Right? I think that, and that was my whole point. I made us go through that whole spiel because of one comment, because coaching is better in Denver. And even though Sean Payton, I don't really think is a top 10 head coach anymore, unless he proves it. The fact that they beat the Chiefs, and then they went to Buffalo and found a way to win. Now, Wild says, give me their O-line and quarterback over the Saints O-line. Why? Legit question. Why? What makes you say that? What makes you say that? Because Russell Wilson last year, now keep in mind, let me say this real quick. Let's say this real quick. If you're bringing Russell Wilson here, Sean Payton's still in Denver. So let me remind you what Russell Wilson did last year with a shitty play caller. With a shitty play caller last year, Russell Wilson threw 60% of his passes for completions, only 3,500 yards, 16 TDs to 11 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 84. That's literally worse than Derek Carr. So no, I wouldn't take Russell Wilson and just replace Derek Carr. Because the problem is when he had a boo-boo garbage coach, he played boo-boo garbage. Now we playing boo-boo garbage. I wonder why. The whole point of this was for me to prove it. I actually think you really helped my point, because here's what Russell Wilson is doing this year. Russell Wilson this year throwing 68% of his passes complete. He has 18 touchdowns, 6.9% completion or TD percentage. That actually leads the NFL. Russell Wilson leads the NFL in percentages of his throws that are touchdowns. 4 interceptions, which is a 1.5, which is significantly lower by 1% than last year, and a quarterback rating of 104. That's what a coaching difference can do. And that's why I'm over here like Saints need to try something on coaching. Something. Anybody. Ronald Curry. Freaking Jari Evans. Ask if Jari wants to do something. Like, bring a single wing, have Taysom lead a single wing, and Jari run the offense. I don't care. Run the wing T. I'm just saying, you can't just say grab the roster, because I think roster to roster, the Saints are a better roster. But the coaching. And the coaching. Now, Jay says Denver O-line is better. Okay. Did you know Russell Wilson's getting sacked on 10% of his dropbacks this year? 10%. That's a lot of percents, man. Now, I'm not trying to say that the Saints offensive line is amazing. I'm not. But Russell Wilson is being pressured on 24% of his dropbacks this year. 24%. He's being sacked on 10% of them. Now, since we're playing the let's be fair game, you want to know what New Orleans numbers are? All right, here's the New Orleans offensive line. The New Orleans offensive line has allowed Derek Carr to be pressured on 15%. They have dramatically improved from the beginning of the season. Derek Carr is being sacked 10%. Wait, hold on. Yeah, right at 5.9%. So, is it though? Is it though? Again, I think the coaching is the difference. And even if we want to say the O-line's better, fine. I honestly don't give a dang. My point is the coaching is worse. My point is the coaching is worse. Now, NTR says, does DA or PC have someone they call for advice? Maybe some play ideas. I mean, we know that they've called Gruden, which I know how a lot of people feel about Gruden at this point, dude. You better call anybody. Like, it's Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and you need to use every lifeline you got, but you're only on like the $50,000 question. I'm just saying. Like, they got to do something. Call somebody. Like, call Maury. Get a DNA test done. See if Dennis Allen's really a head coach. I don't know. I shouldn't have said that. That was rude. Well, y'all could clip it, though. That's hilarious. That was rude, though. I'm sorry. So, what can the Saints realistically do? Let's get back on track Chat, you shout out. You shout out. What can the Saints realistically do through these 2 weeks that would make you feel like they're moving in the right direction? What can the New Orleans Saints do for you to make you feel like they're moving in the right direction? Give me something realistic. I want to shout out y'all's ideas because we've always been about community. We've always been about the chat being key here. Like, we want y'all's opinions heard, right? Paul says, if the offensive line is playing good, why is Derek Carr not? Well, that's the thing. We actually went through Derek Carr kind of a little bit earlier. Derek Carr's playing middling, right? Depends on which way you want to grade quarterbacks, like what stat you want to go with. In some ways, he's number 12 in the league. In some ways, he's number 20. I mean, I think Derek Carr is just Derek Carr, and he's got a bad play caller named Pete Carmichael. And my expectations were never Derek Carr top 10. But I'm not going to argue anybody that wants to say Derek Carr is underperforming because I agree. He is. But, just to recap, Derek Carr is 12th in the NFL in yards. In touchdown passes, Derek Carr, this is going by touchdown passes, is 19th in touchdown passes. If we go by interception percentage, like how often he turns the ball over, he's the second best quarterback in the NFL in interception percentage. Now, again, what I have said about Carr is that he's efficient. Like, he is safe, but that doesn't necessarily translate to good. He is safe. He's got the second best interception percentage in the NFL this year. And if you go by quarterback rating, Derek Carr is 17th. I think he's middling. I don't think he's good. I definitely don't think he's good. I think that both him and Jameis Winston could play significantly better than some of those numbers with a good play caller. Giovanni says, why aren't we having the discussion about Jake Haener? He looked decent in the preseason. Any chance the Saints roll with him next year? The thing with Jake Haener for me is they don't play Jake Haener. Like, they don't start him unless they give it up on the season. That's my genuine thought. If you see Jake Haener coming to the field, New Orleans Saints are admitting defeat. They're saying it's over. It's barbecue chicken. It's done. No more season. That's it. So, if you see Jake, it's done. I would say it's too early. Now, let me just to answer your question, to go in, I want to give you a little bit more than just that kind of blank answer. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to count out the games, and I'm going to tell you what the record would need to be before I would be like, all right, it's time. So the Saints are 5-5 right now. Let's say they come out and lose to Atlanta on the bye week. It's not them. I don't expect them to beat the Lions, so that would be 2 losses. Now you're 5-7. If you lose to the Panthers and you go 5-8 and you have 4 games left, depending on what the rest of the division does, I would give Jake Haener the last 4 games if you lose the next 3 straight. If you're just asking my personal opinion. Because I don't realistically expect to beat the Lions, but I do realistically expect to beat the Panthers and the Falcons. But if you lose the next 3 and the division has soared, like Atlanta's winning and Tampa's winning, the last 4 or the last 3, you give to Jake. So you could add in the New York Giants game. So if you lose Atlanta, Lions, Panthers, Giants, then you definitely give the last 3 to Jake. Definitely. So, says, let's see. Mike, I don't remember what your first comment is, so I'm going to skip the second one, but yeah. I will say this, just generally speaking, no, Miss Gail Benson doesn't care about money. Miss Gail Benson is actually one of the very rare billionaires. Remember, because she grew up dirt poor like we did. She really doesn't care about the money. Like, she gives that stuff away like freaking candy. Now, her accountants and the people who work for her care about her money. But, no, man, especially before old man Benson passed, she was just giving away a lot. And it's already set, I'm pretty sure, that at her passing, the estate is set to give away money to the city of New Orleans for like the foreseeable, for like 20 years. Let me verify what I'm saying. Gail Benson money after death. Let's just quick Google, see if I can find it real quick. All right, so here's what Miss Gale, because truly, and I'm not, I just want to, because Mike, I don't think you know this, right? Here's Miss Gail Benson. Miss Benson, who has no heirs, intends for the Saints to be sold upon her passing to a buyer who is contractually bound to keep the team in New Orleans and for all the proceeds to go to charities in the city. That is her current will and testament. If she were to die right now, the team has to be sold to someone who contractually cannot move it from New Orleans, and then the profits go to all of the charities in the city. That's Gail Benson. So, do I think Gail Benson wants the Saints to be good? Yes. Do I think Gail Benson gives a damn if the Saints are good because of the ticket sales? Not at all. Not at all. Like, I would argue that Miss Gail Benson is literally the type of billionaire you wish other billionaires would be. Truly. I say that honestly because I'm not getting into any type of political discussion. I'm just telling you how it is. And this is an article that you can read on USA Today, Times-Picayune, The Advocate, etc. Saints president Dennis Lauscha will serve as the executor of the estate, and if he's not around, then Greg Bensel or Mickey Loomis will do it. I'm just reading from the thing. That would create an influx of potential several billions of dollars. The latest estimate, and this was 2 years ago, gives the Saints a current value of $2.5 billion. So here's the plan. Would be distributed to the New Orleans community over the years, committed to serving those in need. Additionally, the Superdome recently inked a long-term deal with Caesar, which includes options to extend the arrangement for 10 to 24 years, further raising the Saints' valuation. Simply put, if she is to die, for literally decades to come, the money is going to be continually pulled from the trust and put back into the city. Like, I only wanted to bring that up because Miss Gale is a special lady. Now, I'm not saying that she's an amazing owner when it comes to running a football franchise, but when it comes to like who she is as a person, that's special. Name me another billionaire who literally says, I'm going to give all the money to the city. Now, let me just go ahead and say something real quick. Oh, the city going to all that money up. Like the city, I'm going to say that it's going to be the corruption level when that happens is going to be so high. That money is going to just get stole, droll everywhere. That the plan's amazing. I don't trust not a damn soul to make sure it happens correctly. But Miss Gale's part's amazing. 90% of that money is going to be sold on like stupid ass Drew Brees diamonds or something and bay leaf, pinto bean, red beans and rice cereal. I don't know. It's going to get wasted and trashed because we live in like the most corrupt government in state-wise in the whole damn country. But yeah, I did cause we are no Gotham. Exactly. We literally live in New Orleans, Gotham. That is exactly where we live. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Did Mr. Benson have kids? What about them? So there was a struggle, if you will, over the estate of who had rights to what when he died. Short answer, Miss Gale won. She has everything. It's hers. So if she says the Saints get sold and stay in New Orleans, ain't nobody can do a damn thing about it. They already had that. There was a big legal battle several years ago, right before he passed. They tried to argue he was incompetent. They tried to besmirch Miss Gale and say that she was awful and stealing the money, and they lost. The kids lost, so they don't get anything, and it's all going to go to charities in the city. So, man, this took a random turn I did not expect this podcast to take, but I do think it's, good stuff. Yeah, but yeah, random. Anyway, sorry about that. Appreciate you, by the way, Crayons, for supporting the channel because I can't do what I do without people like you. And right now, I'm rocking. If you don't have it, you need it. Look at this clean white on white. This is the Who Dat Confessional official snapback. It's clean. I'm telling y'all, it's so clean. You can wear it to Easter. It's so clean. Don't let your kids touch it. Get their grubby hands all over. But if you want to support the channel, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, not required, but helps us out tremendously. Lester says, what does it matter who the quarterback is if the head coach and an offensive coordinator don't have a clue what's going on? So, Lester, that's where I tend to be, which is why I really don't personally care about the Jameis Winston versus Derek Carr argument. You know, I pulled out the receipts because I did a Jameis Winston film study, and some people took it as me hating on Winston. So I pulled out the receipts. You can clearly say and see that I've wanted that man to be a starter and get a legitimate opportunity since 2021. And I don't ever feel like he got it here. And I don't ever feel like he's going to get it here. But I am glad that he's here as the backup. I don't see a change happening. If it does, I'll be shocked. I'll be on this podcast and I will literally apologize to Dennis Allen for calling him the things that I am, for not willing to take, for saying that he wouldn't take accountability and make a change. If he feels that Dennis Allen, I'm sorry, I can't get names right tonight. If he feels like Derek Carr really is the liability. Thank you, Nola. I do appreciate that. But I just don't know what exactly New Orleans can do, because at the end of the day, I think it comes down to Mickey Loomis. And Mickey Loomis really got to make the call. Like, Mickey Loomis has got to be the one that finally sits down and says, enough is enough. This clearly isn't right. This isn't working. And if this is how it is at the end of the year, he's got to make a change. And at the moment, the man ain't making a change. But it's the bye week, and there is potential for goodness. There is reasons to be happy. And we will come back to some of those reasons on Thursday for another edition of the Who Dat Confessional podcast. Now, I love and appreciate every single one of you. Join the Discord if you haven't already. Follow me on Twitter at RevDeuceWindham. And I will see y'all Thursday night, and we will continue this conversation. It's been a good one. Y'all are amazing. And Beehive, maybe, just maybe, we will discuss Tampa and Atlanta's future schedule coming up. Who Dat, God bless. Catch you on the next one. Out.